All right. Hello and welcome back to Time for Fellowship with Andrew. Matt is making some good progress on his house. I know he's been working lengthy days to get his house flipped. So he's on the home stretch and he should be back with us again, likely next week. But today I have another very special guest and I will cue the music and bring him on.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right. Well, I would like to introduce our very special guest today, which is Brother Jim Harpole. He was raised to the most sublime degree of Master Mason, slightly less than a month ago?
Yes, a couple of weeks ago.
Yep. So, Jim, we'll start with the normal question. What brought you to Freemasonry, and how'd you get into this mess with us?
Well, good morning, Andrew. Thank you for having me this morning. So, I have been friends with Jeff and Leslie Thiele for several years. We worked together in the police department, and I became aware of Jeff's involvement with the Masons, but really never understood, much about it. But myself and my wife, attended several events at the lodge, spaghetti dinner and open house, and we did axe throwing. So I got to meet a lot of the brothers, and everybody was just friendly and accepting, and just seemed like a great group of people and a great organization, great fraternity. So I had an interest in it, but with my work schedule, a lot of travel, I just didn't want to commit to something that I felt I wouldn't be able to commit to at the time. So I'm getting close to the point where I plan on retiring from full-time work, and I thought this was a good time to start my journey into Freemasonry. And, Jeff and Leslie are two of my favorite people in the whole world, and I think Jeff really embodies what this fraternal organization is about when it comes to brotherhood and showing brotherly love. And it's not just words, it's actual actions that I've seen, not just from him, but others that I've met. And so it was intriguing to me. And so that's where things began for me.
Well, yeah, I kept wondering when you were going to join because, Jeff would invite Masons to lots of, non-Masonic events that you were invited to too, and you helped at the conference of Grand Masters as well.
That's correct.
And so you were just always hanging out with Masons all the time by proxy. So I kind of figured eventually, I was like, he'll turn into a petition eventually.
Right. I guess I was a wannabe.
A waiting to be.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So being a very fresh Master Mason, what I'm curious about is what has been the most meaningful part of your Masonic journey so far? It's so fresh, but so a lot of the stuff that you've been doing is through the mentorship process because you haven't been able to go to our super fun business meetings yet.
Right.
Well, you did this week.
Right.
But yeah, so what's that process been like for you?
Very interesting. It's hard to know what to expect when you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But really interesting and very fulfilling. And so I've been extremely happy along the way with the journey and with what I've learned and the educational piece. But what really has been, I think, most interesting to me is just how helpful everybody's been, and the educational piece and the information that's sent to me, through emails, and just all of the willingness on everybody's part to help me through. I'm not out there alone wondering what's next. I've got that support group, that network of people, and I'm brand new. And that's the other thing. I wasn't sure, okay, as a brand new guy coming into this, am I going to be accepted like everybody else? And the answer is yes. And so that has been, for me, extremely helpful because I don't feel like I'm alone on this journey. I feel like I've got this whole brotherly group of people behind me, standing there with me and helping me through. And the depth of things as well, just the depth of the organization and its history. And Jeff gave me maybe 3 years ago this Gold Wisconsin program book, which gives an overview of the program. But when I was reading through that and I saw the list of people who have been Freemasons over the history of, of Freemasonry, it just struck me. I'm like, wow, you look at that 14 U.S. presidents.
Yep.
And by the way, 6 of those 14 are either named James or Andrew. So
Perfect.
almost half.
Yep.
But businessmen, film stars, astronauts, entertainers, patriots, and the list goes on. And I'm thinking, wow, to be a part of that, to think George Washington, our first president, was a Freemason and went through and has experienced the same things I'm experiencing, it's just kind of awe-inspiring, you know?
It gives you like a weird personal connection knowing that you shared a very similar experience.
Right.
It might have been slightly different and jurisdictionally different, but at its core, they were interested in the similar things that you're interested in. And I've always thought it's cool that in Masonry that it makes you feel like you have like a more intimate connection with people through history and through brethren through history. It's always fun when you read a bibliography of someone who's a Mason and you're like, I'm just reading about my brother.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So it's always fun. And it's interesting because you're saying like, will I be welcomed in? When you look at like our officer line, most of those people have been brethren for less than 5 years. So you'll see that like when you're coming in, you're like, oh, these guys have been doing this forever. And you realize they haven't. So it's interesting because we have such a young officers line, Masonically young, I should say, meaning, people who are less than, 5 years, many less than 10 years as well, that it's like at our lodge, these newer Masons are kind of getting to work right away doing stuff. And so the turnaround time from being joined and being asked to help is pretty quick, which I think is great because it kind of, we're craftsmen. We want to get to work, right?
Right.
Has anything resonated with you from the Masonic symbolism that stuck out to you through this journey?
I'm still trying to like absorb everything and learn, and there's still a lot to learn. But I think what maybe most resonated with me was just the fact how important the symbolism is and how meaningful the different symbols are for the fraternal organization. That was something, they're not just symbols, they have meanings. A lot of times an organization or a group or business, whatever, they have logos, right? They have symbols, they have, icons or whatever that they use, but they're just pictures on a piece of paper or on a website. These are truly meaningful, symbols that have really important value and meaning and substance to what you're doing. And that, I guess, really stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's interesting in the way that like our symbols are a call to interact with a philosophical idea, which is all tailored to making a good man better. And so, yeah, like when you look at the square and compass, it's not just sitting there as a cool looking logo, which it is also a cool looking logo, but it's also a constant reminder to circumscribe your passions and to treat people with honor and respect and how you'd like to be treated. And it's always sitting there in a Mason's face as a reminder of, what they should be striving to do, which is like, we love symbols. So they're just shoved everywhere. Everywhere you look, you'll see symbols sitting around in the lodge. So what do you think being a Master Mason means to you personally? And how do you see it helping to shape your future?
So, I spent almost 33 years on the Milwaukee Police Department. And one of the things I liked about policing is the camaraderie that exists within policing. In my current job, I miss that. And I retired in 2018. So for 6 years, I've been retired. And the thing I've been missing most in that 6-year period is the camaraderie that I had with the police department. And I wanted something, and I felt like I need something to feel that camaraderie. And this fraternal organization fills that void for me in a really positive, strong way, more so than I thought it would. And what I like about it is that you have so many people from different backgrounds, different professions, races, ethnicities, religions, political, affiliations. And I think that makes you a better person to have that kind of a group of people, of men, of brothers that you can associate with and learn from and not become so myopic. The one thing in policing that was different is that you have a tendency. I started when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So my tendency was that most of my friends were all in policing.
Yep.
So I didn't have a real, what's the word I'm looking for? Expansive
a
group
broad
of friends,
group,
broad groups that, from different backgrounds. I really like that. And I think that's going to help make me a better person, a better man, because having that group of individuals and being able to learn from them and to truly seek, the knowledge they bring with their different backgrounds, different experiences, I think is something that you can't dismiss. It's critical. It's just, as far as my growth goes, I'm 58 years old, but I still have a lot of growth in me. Okay. I feel like I need to continue to grow.
Yeah.
As I went through the police organization, I had mentors, but reached a certain point where like all my mentors were retired and gone, and now I work in a job where I'm like the only guy in Milwaukee. Everybody else is in another city or state, and I felt like I was missing a mentor, because I think no matter how old you get, no matter what you're doing, everybody needs a mentor. And so I feel like this also has given me those mentors that I was lacking, that I was missing, and I feel good about that. And I think that's going to make me a better person as well, better man.
Well, and and maybe you could tell me with your sage 58-year-old wisdom to my 33-year-old wisdom, I've always felt like one of the secrets to youth is to never stop trying to learn and improve. Because the moment you're like satisfied, you're like, yep, I learned enough. Then it's like, well, then you're just getting old. Like
Right.
you're not growing. And, I think anything you think, plants or trees, anything that is growing has an element of liveliness and life to it. And so it's nice that within Masonry, since it's a lifelong fraternity, that you can always maintain some level of trying to be active and growing and learning and improving as a man, because I don't think anyone ages out of the need to try to be a better man. You can't be like, I'm 70 now, I guess.
Yeah.
I did my best,
Right.
whatever. I'm just going to accept that this is enough. I don't think it should ever be enough.
Right.
And what's fun too is, and I agree with you on I like that it is people from all walks of life, even the fact that it's people ranging from the age of 20s to 90s.
Right.
Can also bring interesting perspectives where, like, you can get a lot of the old man wisdom coming on down, and then you can have a kid show you how to put a podcast app
Right.
on your phone. Like, you know what I mean? So, like,
Right.
there's this shared space that really allows you to, I came from Cedarburg, and I understand what it feels like to be in an echo chamber sometimes where, everyone in that town and all my friends were from similar backgrounds, similar lifestyles. You never had anyone challenge you on anything because you always agreed on everything. You're like,
Right.
yep, we're all on the same page.
Right.
We're all from the same place. And you start to get a false sense of confidence that everything you say is correct. And, because why wouldn't it be? Everyone agrees with me. Until you get into a broader group of friends, then you start to go, oh, I need to actually challenge some of my beliefs, and and I can learn a lot from other people's beliefs too, which I think is really important to, in Masonry, I always say that we spread light, and, light being, wisdom of sorts and stuff like that. I think it's really hard to be a wise person when you're in an echo chamber because you're not allowed to actually be challenged on what you understand about people.
Right.
So I think that's one of those things we keep saying, that past Grandmaster Dave Ritchie, in one of his articles in the Masonic Journal, said, like iron sharpens iron, so does one good man sharpen another. And I think that's a huge part of Masonry.
Yes. I agree.
So what do you think? What would you like to do as a Mason? What are you passionate about? So I've always told, like, a lot of my younger members, the key to doing stuff in Masonry is understanding you already have a group of guys who will give you their ear, right? And so you really can do whatever you want as long as you convince people who are your brothers to get behind you and help you with it. What would be some ideas that you would have on things that you would like to do with your new Master Mason status as a craftsman?
So, I've been thinking about this and really watching like what everyone does. I've been paying attention to the different roles and thinking, where would I see myself kind of fitting in? And, I see events being planned, and I think I have a good level of organizational skill. And so as I, move towards that time when I'm going to be retired from full-time work, I think there's opportunities for me to get more involved. And I think I would be good in planning events and being a part of committees where events that, are being scheduled and planned. Or now I'm kind of rambling here, but I think that's an area that I could see myself getting involved in, and growing.
I mean, there's no shortage of people needing to help to plan events. If you had to make your own event, what would it look like? What do you think would be something that you think would be fun for a lodge to do?
It's funny because I was just thinking about that this morning. I really enjoyed the golf event at Lux Golf,
Yep.
and the axe throwing event's fun. But I don't know. I was trying to think about that. What else would be fun out there to get a group of Masons together and go out and do something that would be fun and just that bonding time. And so I haven't figured that one out yet, Andrew. I'm still working on thinking that through. But there's so much potential and opportunity out there, things that you could set up and work on putting together.
And one thing that's like unique in Masonry is the unique events. Like, some of them are like pretty standard. Other ones, like, it's truly just brothers creating whatever they want. Like I had your mentor Joe come and was talking to me how he wants to do like a mead event where they're all making meads and sampling meads. And I was like, yeah, you can probably do that. I'm sure that I feel like Masons would love making mead. I don't know why, but we seem like the type of people who'd like making mead. And so like, it's really like you're given the opportunity to kind of be as creative as you want. And as long as you can convince like 5 guys, which is pretty easy in Masonry, to go with you, you can minimum start somewhere and say, let's give this a shot. And you can really test and do whatever you want. So it's always worth thinking about, because that can include fellowship events, charitable events, education events. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can really do anything you want. And I think you'll find as you sit within Masonry and continue to learn, ideas will just start popping up where you'll be like, oh, I had an idea. What if we all dressed as dinosaurs and did a race together? And you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, sounds good. Let's do it. You never know.
Well, I think, and I get the Masonic Journal now, so that's really interesting as well, because I get to see what's going on all across the state. One of the things that really struck me also, Andrew, was how much this organization gets involved in charity and charitable events. Again, it's not just words on a piece of paper saying that we're going to be these charitable guys. I mean, it's practiced. It's in action, and you see it, and I think that's just great, and I like that. It's amazing to me how many different charitable events the Masons are involved in across the state, from blood drives to donations of, these fire suppression tools to law enforcement and fire departments, and the list goes on and on and on. To
road cleanups, they can be big and small. Masons are kind of they're out there, and they've always been out there in their communities. I mean, we're kind of have it weird being in such a large city. It's hard to see the impact of, organizations on their community because the community is so big. But in small towns, like Masonry has a strong effect because, in a town of a couple thousand people, someone going out and cleaning up roads, doing all that stuff, that makes the local news. And it is, almost every town has a lodge.
Right.
My dad always told me when he was growing up, the lodge in his very rural town in Geneseo, Illinois, they had a Masonic lodge. I've seen it. I want to visit, but I'm never there at the right time. But he's like, yeah, they were known for doing fish fries. Like, we would always go out there for their fish fry because it was like, something to do in the town going on. So it's like Masonry's always been like a working force of good within its community. And yeah, when you look at the Masonic Journal, you can really see it because there's just article after article. Like, they're going here. There's a scholarship they gave to this school. They're cleaning up a road. We're donating jump bags to all the state troopers. Like, we're really doing a lot. And I've noticed even since joining that the amount of charitable activities is on the rise too. Like, I think a lot of people in Masonry right now are getting a lot of energy, and they're getting their butts in gear and doing a lot of good stuff. So you'd probably join at a good time.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that. And so people ask me all the time, well, what do you do? One thing was trying to convince people that, I was not joining a cult. And that, you have the people who believe that are the conspiracy theorists, because there's so much misinformation out there on the internet and elsewhere about this organization. But now where was I going with that thought?
You were saying that people don't always know, so we have to explain to them.
Right, exactly. And so I think that, I tell people there are a lot of charity events, really, it's perplexing to them because they don't know that. Again, I think it goes back to we're in a big metro area here where maybe that gets lost because there's so many different organizations in the area doing charitable work, but in those small towns, it does stand out more. But so that was something, just when people would come up to me, I'd say, hey, I'm joining, and they're, with a perplexing look and the questions of, well, what do you do there?
I think so. A couple of years before you joined, Most Worshipful Brother Paul Torville had told the Masons of Wisconsin to get their elevator pitches in line so we can stop fumbling around and saying, oh, it's a system of morality veiled in allegory. And the person's like, I'm just scared. I don't know what you said to me.
Exactly.
And to try to think about how to answer that question. The one that I go to is I'm a member of the world's oldest fraternity. Basically, we do 3 big things. We're a brotherhood, so we have a lot of fun events and do fun things together. And we make bonds of really fun friendships from, people from all walks of life. We do charitable works in our community and try to give back to our community. And it's all wrapped up in a nice box with a really cool history and philosophy that we try to ascribe to. And I found that at least kind of helps them gleam. It's like, all right, they're a bunch of dudes who hang out and they go play throw axes at stuff. They help their community and they like to nerd out about philosophy and history. And I go, yeah, that's basically it. And then I say the goal of the organization is to make a good man better. And our philosophy kind of deals with that. Mm-hmm. So you can steal that if you want.
Sure. Perfect. And the other thing, too, I think, which was helpful, so from like my wife, for example, being able to attend some of the events at the lodge that are open to family and the public, and it's not like this is just a bunch of guys at the door, you can't come in. There was this openness that, bring your spouse in. And even in the interviews that I did before joining, after I submitted my petition, I was told, if you want your wife there, have your wife there, and so if she has questions, she can ask questions too. So you've met my wife. She's come in, she's, and she's, at that point now where she's like, yeah, this is a great organization. She's happy that I joined up, and she's very supportive and encouraging for me to continue on in this journey.
Well, truly, it's like one of the perfect retirement hobbies because it's kind of like a part-time job sometimes. So, it's like, I think a lot of like guys who reach retirement age love doing Mason stuff because it gives them something to do during the week.
Right.
So both my parents are retired, and like that first month, you could tell like they were kind of struggling with what do I do all day? Like it's a lot of free time, but then you have to find some time to spend. So their retirement hobby has been helping raise my child. But so that's kind of helped them give them like, okay, I have a couple days a week where I have things planned, and Masonry gives you the opportunity to kind of fill up your calendar however you're comfortable within retirement and say, hey, I have something I need to plan. I can't just sit on my butt and watch TV all day. I have something to do. And people who need my help and a way to give back to the community. So I think it's actually like probably mostly designed for retired people, but then, we decide to get into it when we're young and do 2 jobs or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I agree 100% because I don't want to retire and plop on the couch and watch TV all day. I want to stay busy. I want things to do. And this is the perfect opportunity for me to do that, to be involved and to find places where I can fit in, and be of assistance, when I'm in that retirement state.
What do you think that has Masonry had any effect on your personality as of yet? And do you think it will have an effect on it as time goes on?
I think it'll have an effect definitely as time goes on. I'm still, like I said, I'm still in that learning state. There's still so much to absorb, and I still feel overwhelmed at times. Okay. It's hard to say, I think maybe it's made me more open just to being more of a critical thinker on things, because you do have such a diverse background of people coming together and just, and looking at the pictures on the wall, the past Grand Masters, and just thinking about the history of the place and all the people that have come through. And that to me is, again, another intriguing thing. And that kind of hit me kind of hard, to see that and to say, wow, and some of these people I've known, the people that I've known myself personally over the years,
I just realized I have 2 books for you sitting over there. I'll give you on the way out that's on Wisconsin Freemasons history that I think you might enjoy. It's interesting. So I was asked something similar when I was kind of a newer Master Mason. What I've found is you don't actually notice it's happening, that you're improving or your personality's changing in certain ways until years later, and you kind of look back and you go, oh, you know what? I think I have changed a little bit, because when it comes to personal changes, they're so incremental that it's kind of unnoticeable. But, if you're talking to guys at Lodge about me, and Jeff likes to say that I was such a horrible person or whatever, but you can hear them being like, yeah, like you can see the changes, things start to rub off. And I know with a lot of my mentees, I look at them when I was mentoring them and then where they're at now and go, I can see it. I can see a lot of positive changes within all of my mentees. And it's interesting because it is truly like just by surrounding yourself with good and driven people, it just starts to rub off. And then you don't even notice it because you're just like, this is what we do here. You got to do our thing. And it just kind of rubs off. What advice would you give as a fresh set of mind to someone who is interested in Masonry or just beginning their Masonic journey through the degrees?
So a couple of things. First of all, don't believe all the rubbish out there, the misinformation about the Freemasons. And I think that stops a lot of people, from wanting to join. Secondly, it's really pay attention and listen. And not just listening for the sake of listening, but for the sake of comprehension and trying to comprehend what you're hearing and what you're learning and understand the importance behind it all. Because it's not just about joining an organization to have something to do and check the box. Oh, I joined,
Yep.
check. Now I'm one of them. It's about truly becoming a better man. And in doing so, you truly have to comprehend what Freemasonry is all about. Going back to those symbols and the history and the meaning behind things and the purpose of Freemasonry. And to me, that's important. Because it's easy to join an organization just because my buddy's a member. Well, yeah, it sounds like a cool thing to do. I'll join up too, but not really pay attention to what's important with that organization. You pay your dues, and I'm sure you have members that pay their dues, and that's it, right? You don't hear from them for the rest of the year. But I think, and then secondly, and I'm not there yet, but I really think it's important to be involved. And we just talked about that a little bit, right? Especially for me into retirement, I can be more involved, but be involved, show up, because that's important too. Showing up and being present, committing yourself to the organization. As I told you at the beginning of this podcast, the reason I was a little hesitant wasn't because, I wasn't sure so much about the organization. It was really more about commitment. And I want to commit to what I sign up for. But that's the other thing, is be committed, show up, be present, get involved. And I think your journey, and again, this is from a brand new guy. But I think, because I don't know yet, but I think the journey will be a more fulfilling one, a better one, a more enlightening one, and make me personally and anybody else who joins a better man.
I mean, it falls right into the old past master advice. You get out of masonry what you put into masonry.
Right.
Yeah, if you put in money and just pay dues, and then you're like, man, I'm not a better man yet. This is lame. And you're like, you haven't done anything. Like, you really have to challenge yourself to do so. And I think that's the right attitude to have. And I think that's what you'll find too, is some people will join masonry just to check a box, right? But something about the degrees, something they're like, actually, I didn't think I was going to like that stuff, but now I kind of want to do more. Like the way that we teach our lessons is meant to inspire people, right? So like the whole goal of the degrees is to do it in such a way as to really inspire the individual to want to grow, to want to be a better man through our initiatic performances. So I've noticed that it works because I remember some people that within our lodge that came through, and after the first degree, they were like, I don't know, man, that was kind of weird, right? And I go, it's only weird if you make it weird. But it's an old lessons of, doing performances, show it off. And then, after the next degree, he's like, actually, I thought that was pretty cool. And I go, it is cool. And then after the third one, he's like, wow, that was awesome. And I go, it is awesome. It's fun. It's just like, sure, is it nerdy to have a bunch of guys putting on plays for one another? Maybe. Is it effective? Yes.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100% with that. And I keep losing my train of thought. It's early in the morning here.
And there's a microphone in your face, which will always steal your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. It'll pop back in, I'm sure, in a minute. Although I know what I was going to say, going back to that commitment. So, but I think that's similar in a lot of organizations. In the police department, there were guys that just wanted to have the badge and the patch, just say, I'm a cop. They didn't want to do police work. They just want to be a cop. They check that box, I'm a cop now, but don't want to actually do the work of a police officer. So I think doing the work, if you're there, you got to do the work. And the degree work, it can be challenging. Not can be, it is challenging. But again, that adds to that commitment. Because if you get halfway through and you're like, oh, this is just too much for me, okay. Or if it was too easy, if all you had to do is read a couple sentences and you're good to go, then where's that commitment level going to be? So I think the challenging process going through those degrees helps to ensure that commitment.
Well, so I heard a good line from past Grandmaster Don Hensiak, had a short talk bulletin he did many years ago through the Masonic Service Association. They do these little bulletins that you can get. They have a podcast too that's pretty interesting if you're interested in it. And it was talking about why do we have the memory work requirements. And he says, as operative masons, we worked in stone, chipping away to make our master's piece, which was tedious and long process that took incremental steps. We as speculative masons no longer work in stone. So this is our version of kind of the chipping away at a task that is difficult but achievable. And it teaches a very good lesson that you're like, hey, you might come into this. I remember Jason, who's getting his Master Mason next week, was like, I just don't know how I'm going to memorize this stuff. And I go, we all feel like that. And then you see people doing very long lectures later. I go, it just kind of, it seems daunting until you start to get to work and commit yourself to the work. And then suddenly you're doing longer and longer and longer ones. And you're like, whoa, I didn't think I could do that. And you're like, well, it kind of, it synthesizes like kind of the Masonic philosophy where it's like, well, through the help of a brother, so you have a mentor, through working with, your brothers, you can accomplish something if you're willing to put the time in, right? And there's another element to it too, where there's the Masonic idea of building the temple within your mind. So the cornerstone of the temple for Masons within our jurisdiction is memorizing our obligation, which is what makes us members of each degree, is the obligation. So that's where you start. They go, this is going to be the first stone in. They go, you now contain the obligation in your mind as a part of you. And as you learn more and more degree work, you start to continue to build that temple. And if you're a ritualist, you're like, yes, not only does Masonry live outside, I can do the entire degree in my mind. And you're like, okay. So like, it's an interesting way of integrating the philosophy within you. And like when you take on new parts in the degrees, sometimes that can be the first time you actually understand what that part's significance is. Like when I was doing a part in the Master Mason degree where there's a prayer that kind of deals with the somber topic of death. I'd heard that part many, many times, but I never really looked at it close enough to be like, oh, there's something here to unpack until you do it. So then you put another stone in your mind. You go, I've now been more intimately connected with that part. So the fun thing about being a new Master Mason is your mind's so fresh that you have the most fun job. It's just to experience stuff and to learn stuff. It's like everything can be a new experience. And I would encourage you when you are done, I know you're still working on your Master Mason posting, grab a small part in the degree, even the charges, a great starting one for a Master Mason who's interested in taking on responsibility. Looking at the Fellowcraft charge is a good one. You already know how to memorize. It's very similar to memorizing an obligation, but it can be a good way to get your foot in the door on helping with degrees.
Yeah, that sounds great. Definitely good advice. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I know that we have a time span to look at, but I really want to thank you for coming on out and hopping on the podcast with me, especially as a new Master Mason. So I really appreciate you coming on, Jim.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Next week, when Matt is likely back, we will be back to our regular two-host what do we call it? New host podcasting. And we'll bring the news and events back and all that good stuff. So thank you for tuning in. And please feel free to follow us on all of our socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X. And yeah, let people know about the podcast. And thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.